I think as long as there continues to be places where people can come and see community and see Seattle as it used to be, I think there's still hope. I think as long as we continue to do that community building, that's deep community building and not just one-offs of here's this one thing that you can do, of how do you get engaged and involved in community? How do you as an individual become part of the collective identity of Seattle?
This is Hourglass, the podcast for United Way of King County in Seattle. Coming up, what is EDI and what role does it play in ensuring that Seattle remains a diverse, culturally rich city for everyone? We will chat with members of two United Way supported organizations about the city's Equitable Development Initiative, which was launched in 2016 to help address displacement of people of color from Seattle's once affordable neighborhoods. Both Jessica Juarez-Wagner of Potlatch Fund and Wyking Garrett of Africatown Community Land Trust believe the initiative has been under attack due to recent city council legislation, and now they're spending their time voicing support for EDI's future. We will also learn about United Way's new Our Neighbor Fund and hear about a United Way supportive volunteer opportunity. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for tuning in. In 2019, the Seattle Times reported that Seattle had become the third most gentrified city in the United States, trailing only Washington, D.C. and Portland, Oregon. As the area's tech industry began booming in the mid-1990s, young urban professionals began flocking to Seattle and moving into previously affordable areas known for their large concentrations of people of color. Within no time, the newcomers drove the home prices up and the longtime residents out. One of the starkest examples of gentrification's displacement here is the city's Central District, a once vibrant, historically Black community that was home to Quincy Jones, Ernestine Anderson, Jimi Hendrix, and Sir Mix-a-Lot. In 1970, the Central District was 73% Black. By 2020, the number had shrunk to 15% Black. Yet while many elected officials don't speak much publicly about gentrification and displacement, the city of Seattle in 2016 decided to do something about it. The city's Office of Planning and Development launched the Equitable Development Initiative, a multi-million-dollar set of strategies to address concerns about displacement and underserved communities as Seattle grows. The city said that the Equitable Development Initiative, or EDI, was to address displacement and inequality by providing communities of color funding and support to acquire property and investments in programs and projects. EDI was crafted not only by the public sector, but by community-based organizations that for years had pressured city officials to address concerns about lack of investment in Seattle communities of color. Since its launch, EDI funding has spearheaded much-needed development for organizations and people of color in Seattle, including several organizations that are funded by United Way of King County. Those organizations include Bird Bar Place, which renovated its headquarters, a 100-year-old historic firehouse, Chief Seattle Club, which created a mixed-use project for 80 affordable apartment homes and a health clinic, United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, which made repairs and upgrades to the Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center at Discovery Park, Africatown Community Land Trust, which opened the William Gross Center for Cultural Innovation, a hub to address community needs and support entrepreneurship in the Central District, and El Centro de la Raza, which is building affordable housing in Columbia City. By all accounts, everything with EDI appeared to be going A-OK, until a couple of weeks ago, when scores of community leaders and organizations converged on Seattle City Hall to oppose a last-minute proviso they feared would undercut $25 million in funding for EDI this year. The proviso was introduced the Friday before Memorial Day weekend and pledged to put on hold EDI funding and place new requirements for the office that manages the initiative. The proviso prompted more than 70 in-person and more than 100 remote speakers to voice opposition at the city's public hearing. City officials responded by saying that the proviso was misinterpreted, that EDI funding was not in jeopardy, and that new reporting requirements would ensure that EDI projects are completed efficiently and on time. Since then, city officials reportedly altered the amendment to EDI to request that the office that manages the initiative produce a report in September on how the program can be improved. But the damage has been done. As the city faces a budget shortfall of more than $200 million, nonprofit groups are concerned that the proviso would have ultimately put EDI funding on the chopping block had they not voiced opposition. They're wondering whether the battle to keep EDI is truly over, and what losing that battle might mean for the future of communities of color in the city. United Way sat down with members of two partner organizations that receive EDI funding. Jessica Juarez-Wagner is a program manager for Potlatch Fund and was development director for United Indians of All Tribes when it received EDI funding. Wyking Garrett is president and CEO of Africatown Community Land Trust. Both speak of how EDI funding has been critical to their organizations. Garrett, in fact, was there during the origins of EDI.
At the time, the Central District wasn't actually a part of the conversation for anti-displacement. The general narrative was basically that ship had sailed.
Wow.
But we did not accept that narrative, and we thought that it was important for, one, preservation to happen, and two, a repopulation of those who have been displaced due to past policies and practices of structural racism. And the point of the EDI was to be a mitigating factor against the aggressive gentrification that had already taken place in the Central District and was also threatening other neighborhoods in the city. So it was an anti-displacement intervention.
Garrett said the EDI-funded William Gross Center gives him hope for future Black entrepreneurship in the city, and Africatown's EDI-funded housing helps people of color become homeowners at a time when, according to news reports, renters outnumber homeowners in the city.
I think the affordable housing projects in the Central District are basically have allowed us to maybe stop the population loss. This community, which has been reported was up at one point 90% Black, but the other thing is that it was one of the highest homeownership communities, highest homeownership rates for Black people in the country. It was nearly 50% homeownership, and that has diminished not just in the city but in the whole county to 28%. And so when we talk about equitable future, we also want to see the Black community having ownership. And EDI has provided a path for ownership for commercial space nonprofits, cultural organizations, which are also a part of the lifeblood and kind of DNA of the community, the social institutions and infrastructure. And so I think it's not just the housing, but it's the businesses, it's the social and cultural institutions that provide spaces for connection and the strengthening of bonds between neighbors so that you can be a community and not just a population.
Jessica Juarez-Wagner says that the versatility of EDI funding has enabled organizations to see projects through from start to finish.
With the EDI funding, folks can apply for multiple different things. It can be the planning stages. So this can be the architectural drawings, preparation of land, purchase of land, etc. And then once that part has been completed, an organization can reapply for the actual expenses of creation, of breaking ground, of whatever that sustainability is. So that is one of the big things, is that this project, while it is multi-year funding or project funding that folks get, it can be multi-project funding for the continuation and completion of a full project. And that's something that's pretty unique with this funding and has really helped organizations that are serving our populations of color or are in our historically redlined or under invested communities. So we really see it with the big people who are in the Seattle community. I know I grew up spending a lot of time at La Raza. I spent a lot of time here at Daybreak Star. But both El Centro and Daybreak are historical buildings. They are older, and they need upkeep. And we need to ensure that we can serve the entire community and not just those who are able-bodied.
Juarez-Wagner said that after the City Hall proviso, she can't help but wonder about the future of EDI.
Do I think that everyone who should be behind it is behind it? No. I wish they were. I wish we were willing to fully invest into the populations that are doing the youth programming, are doing the community building, because this is just Jessica standing on her little Jessica soapbox. But I think community and our interconnectedness is truly the solutions to going forward and building a happier Seattle, because we have become so disjointed. People don't stay in one place very much anymore, and that building of community has dissolved. So when we say we need to invest more in safety, invest more in policing, invest more in all of these things, what we need to invest in is our youth and our community, because if they have those spaces, and if people have connections and interconnectedness and a network that they can lean on, safety improves, community improves, policing goes down.
How confident are you that the Seattle that you hope to see in the future is going to be the Seattle that you see?
I say all the time that I have a love-hate relationship with Seattle now, which is really unfortunate because I love Seattle a little obsessively, a little embarrassingly, honestly. I think as long as there continues to be places where people can come and see community and see Seattle as it used to be, I think there's still hope. I think as long as we continue to do that community building, that's deep community building and not just one-offs of here's this one thing that you can do, of how do you get engaged and involved in community? How do you as an individual become part of the collective identity of Seattle? I think as long as that's there, there's hope for Seattle to be a city for everyone.
Both Juarez-Wagner and Garrett praised the way communities responded in a moment's notice to advocate on behalf of EDI. But they said folks shouldn't feel it necessary to fight for EDI's future in the first place. Garrett wonders if that might be the new norm.
I think that, people just have to keep a close eye and, be ready to move and address any threats expeditiously. I think that it's vulnerable and that those that are committed to inclusive Seattle or equitable or one Seattle, not just a one-class Seattle, must voice support and make sure that the elected officials are held accountable to living out these values that, Seattle is being recognized for on a national stage as, having some forward-thinking policies and interventions that could amount to being a leader in addressing displacement and effectively demonstrating development without displacement.
United Way of King County proudly supports Africatown Community Land Trust, Potlatch Fund, United Indians of All Tribes, Bird Bar Place, El Centro de la Raza, and Chief Seattle Club through our community partnerships. We work with these and other neighborhood-based organizations to combat structural and institutional racism and reduce inequalities so that we can build an equitable future together. To learn more, log on to uwkc.org. United Way of King County recently launched the Our Neighbor Fund, a $12.5 million campaign to invest in strategies that keep families fed and housed and help college students stay in school. Our Neighbor Fund will enable us to provide students with free meals when school is out, leverage millions of dollars in rental assistance funding, provide students with emergency grants and housing assistance, and much more. Please help join the movement to make a difference in the lives of our neighbors. To give, log on to uwkc.org/donate. Looking for a volunteer opportunity? United Way suggests Lambert House LGBTQ+ Youth Center, which is seeking volunteers 23 and older to prepare and serve dinners at least once a month. Meals are sit-down, family-style, with LGBTQ+ and ally youth, volunteers, and staff. For more information, log on to lamberthouse.org. At United Way of King County, we are working side by side with communities to build an equitable future for everyone. Hourglass United Way is a podcast that highlights how we and our partners spend time making a difference in our communities. Our work is made possible by the generous donations from people like you. Please send comments and suggestions about our podcast to hourglassunitedway@gmail.com. To learn more about our work or to support United Way, log on to uwkc.org. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for listening. Until next time.